Have you read or seen the headlines about flooding in Houston or even the Woodlands, Texas? Well, on today's video, we're gonna go over flooding right here in the Woodlands, Texas, what you need to know, what you need to expect, and the things you need to avoid whenever you're searching for a home right here in the Woodlands, Texas. My name is Giles, and I'm a real estate broker here in the Woodlands, Texas. I'm a local resident. I've lived here for over 20 years. I was raised here, I went to high school here, and now I live here and get to help families relocate to our amazing community each and every single day. I lived in this community through Harvey and through all of these kind of freak weather events that we've had recently. So I wanted today give you a firsthand experience of my experience, our clients' experiences, and what you need to be on the look for whenever you're gonna be moving here. So let's jump in. One of the main factors that determines how much rain or flooding or even the damage potential that a hurricane may have on our community is where we're located. So we are 32 miles north of downtown Houston. The Woodlands is a North Houston community, but we are very much so on the probably most north you can get within being still considered in Houston. And we are 80 miles away from the coast of Galveston, the island that's at the very bottom of Houston, still considered Houston, but it's 80 miles away, or we are 80 miles north of the coastline. Additionally, we are just south of Lake Conroe, which is really a fun place for recreation during the summertime, but it also serves as a big detention pond, retention pond, and kind of dam for water in our community. And it definitely has effect on the rivers and streams and the flood zones basically around the Woodlands area. One of the most notable weather events that we've had in recent years is Hurricane Harvey, which happened in August of 2017. Now, Hurricane Harvey came and hit Galveston, but it really didn't have a ton of surge damage that you see in a lot of other hurricanes throughout the nation. The real problem here is that the hurricane lingered over Houston for multiple days. We had over 40 inches of rain in that time frame. And again, this happened at the end of summer after kind of our rainy season, whenever those lakes and those reservoirs were already full. So then you add this crazy amount of rain on top of all that, and dams started to overflow. They had to release dams to prevent flooding in certain areas, but unfortunately it caused flooding down in Houston, certain areas further south of the Woodlands really. Although the Woodlands is a Houston suburb, we really were not affected by Hurricane Harvey as much as further south communities with feet and feet of flooding. Yes, there was lots of rain, and there was maybe some rain in people's streets, which we're gonna talk about a little bit later in this video, but probably around 98% of the homes in the Woodlands weathered really well against the flooding and the amount of rain that we had. As I've said in many more of our other videos, the Woodlands is one of the original and really best well-known master plan communities in this country. And people have come and studied it and then developed it in other areas because of civil engineering and a lot of other fun features and amenities that we have. But really I want to focus on that civil engineering piece. The Woodlands was designed in a way where flooding would hopefully not affect it much. So the first kind of defense that we have in this is our spillways and our detention ponds. Behind neighborhoods and in between village centers and commercial areas, you're gonna find detention. These are intentionally dug up areas for drainage. Lots of runoff from other communities and other neighborhoods in the Woodlands go to these areas where they can fill up and they don't affect the actual neighborhoods and the streets and the homes. That's our first line of defense. The second one is actually parks and ponds. As showcased in our favorite parks video of the Woodlands, there are over 130 parks, and many of them have little ponds in the communities that are around play sets or park benches that really elevate kind of the neighborhood feel. These ponds are actually designed to take on water in the event that the detention and those spillways fill all the way up. Our third line of defense is actually going to be the golf courses in our community. So the golf courses sit even a little bit lower as well, where fairways and greens and sand traps actually fill up with water. They serve as a drainage ditch, if you will, a very beautiful and expensive drainage ditch, but it is another way that it's designed where there's acreage throughout our community, not on the edges, but literally spread throughout the Woodlands to prevent any additional flooding. And then our last line of defense is going to be your neighborhood street. Now, this doesn't happen often, although it did in Harvey, where the street actually, if you can imagine, is a little bit sloped on either side. You then have curbs in some villages, and then the homes and the driveways are kind of built up even a little bit more before your slab and then your house. So as the neighbor, street kind of slopes down, you may get some water on either side, or in some cases, actually fully filled the streets, but that'll be the fourth line of defense. Does not happen very often at all unless there's these kind of freak, once in a lifetime events like Hurricane Harvey. If you're watching this video, you might be like many of our clients and the people that reach out to us all the time that are relocating here. They're going to begin their home searching process, and as a real estate broker and real estate agent, we get to come alongside those families and guide and assist them. So what I'm going to do is take you on a tour of my end of HAR, which is the Houston Association of Realtors. It's our official MLS system that we use to search and find homes and access all the data. So one other thing that I want to mention too is that oftentimes people will include other communities whenever they're talking about the Woodlands. So Oak Ridge, not part of the Woodlands. Magnolia, not part of the Woodlands. If you're searching for houses, you may see results like Spring or Conroe, or honestly, Magnolia or Tomball sometimes. And the important thing to look at here is where are those schools zoned to and what are the property taxes on those? So not to get too specific, but since the Woodlands is a township, Spring will work, the Woodlands will work, Conroe will work in certain areas. Call me, I'm happy to explain it, but let's dive in. And there are a few areas around the Woodlands that were really affected by flooding, but are not part of the Woodlands proper, right? They're not subject to the Woodlands township taxes and all the benefits and amenities that we have, right? So the first thing I want to do is kind of just show you some of the areas, and actually I'm going to pull up the flood map so you can see from my perspective where we look for, what we look to avoid when looking at homes. So all these green dots are going to be homes that are currently for sale. Area X, which is this orange area, is what's out of the special flood zone. It's not in a flood zone in those areas, right? You have the 500-year floodplain, very unlikely to flood, but definitely a possibility, and the 100-year floodway, and then you're in the flood zone. As you can see here, this dark purple area, which is kind of separates Creekside Park, the village of Creekside Park, from the Woodlands proper, that was a flood zone. And my parents actually did flood during Harvey. They backed up to this. They ended up getting, the river and spillway ended up getting really high, and they ended up getting an inch of water in the back of their home, which caused enough damage. So because of that, I am intimately aware, and with these flood zones and other resources that we have, I'm aware of those areas, and we always play defense with clients, depending on their risk tolerance, but we never really want to jump in there. So something I'd like to show you is that you can see that the majority of the Woodlands is not in any of the flood zone, right? Some of these are quite broad, but really houses are not in this purple area here. The majority of it is all in Area X. So it's been built up, and it is not required by any lender to have flood insurance. And stick around towards the end because I'm going to do a specific talk on flood insurance. So let's go into one of these areas and actually show a little bit more kind of detail here. So we can come here to this little community with these luxury homes here and click on them and actually pull up a potential property and look at what we want to call the seller's disclosure, right? So the seller's disclosure is a history report on these homes that the sellers fill out to disclose any information. Here we can see the roof age, is 4 years old on this property. But more specifically, I want to go down to this page here where we talk about flooding. So does this home have present flood insurance? Yes, it does. Never a bad idea. That's a decent indicator if somebody had maybe previously flooded, but it's always good to have it sometimes as preventative. But more so specifically here are these follow-up questions. Was there previous flooding due to a breach of reservoir? No, there was no flooding due to a natural event. There was no water penetration. However, they were located in a 100-year floodplain. So it's those things that I look for with clients before we even start searching. Now, these homes in this area are built up a little bit more. builder is Frankel, specifically talking to this, and they've really never had any issues with flooding with all their homes that are being built. And you can see here how they've elaborated on the FEMA floodplain. If I go back to the map again, we'll click on a different area and a different price point. We'll go here into Creekside, and this $1 million home here that actually is just brand new on the market, we will go and click on the seller's disclosure here. And again, we're gonna scroll down and we're gonna get some more information. So there's no flood insurance and they don't apply to any of those. So they're not in any sort of floodplain, they have not previously flooded. So those are the things that I want to look at for clients before we even schedule showings on homes potentially. Additionally, like we want to verify, if there are homes that are, down here in this area that do back up to that flood zone, I know that those areas may have been affected. So we never want to say that somebody could be deceitful or potentially lie, but it definitely is a possibility. So it's coupled with data and disclosure and then market knowledge too. Like, should we be aware of, should I be on the lookout for certain areas? What are the odds that something could happen in the future? And again, the Woodlands has been here for 50 years. We're celebrating our 50th year anniversary, and it's done a really good job weathering all of this, rain and Houston climate that we get. New construction areas around us were obviously being built after Hurricane Harvey. And so in certain areas, they're adding greater detention. They're building, bigger ponds in the front of communities with big fountains. Those are really just for detention. They're nice and beautiful and you can use them to fish, but that's what it's for, is to prevent flooding. And then they're also building up properties even higher, right? They're adding more dirt, bringing that in and raising those homes to prevent any sort of flooding around there. So if there's a specific village you want to be in, let me know, because your home search is going to be very specific to you and your family's needs. And we want to make sure that the village and even the neighborhood and even the street that you're going to be on doesn't have any previous flood history. Next, let's talk about flood insurance. Now, if you're in a flood zone 500, 100 year, or even actually truly in the flood zone, you will be required by your lender to carry flood insurance. If you're not in a flood zone in Area X, flood insurance is optional and it's really affordable. It's like $700 or $800 a year. You may need an elevation certificate where they come and survey the property to give you that right, altitude effectively of your home. But it's affordable. There are many great options for flood insurance. And if you need it, if you are in one of those areas, it is readily available. All in all, the Woodlands continues to be an amazing place to live. And this is one factor that I think helps separate it from surrounding communities like Kingwood or Cypress or Tomball or even Conroe even, because it weathered so well against flooding and these kind of natural, I don't want to say disasters, but natural disasters that we've had. As always, our goals of these videos are to be your real estate resource of choice. If you're thinking about moving to the Woodlands, Texas, then I would love to be your real estate agent and help your family or yourself find your next dream home right here in our community. Right here on the screen is going to be a QR code for you to scan and my phone number down below. Scan it, you can send me an email, you can even book a private appointment where we can do a little Zoom call, kind of talk about your discovery trip to the Woodlands, if you will, or just give me a phone number down below. That's my personal cell phone number. Reach out, I'd love to chat. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you on the next video.